Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Insider. Today we have guest Phil Kennard. He is the founder and CEO of FutureStay. Welcome, Phil.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on the pod.
Now, Philip, for those who don't know, what is FutureStay and what problem do you really solve? Let's get into it.
Awesome. FutureStay is a technology product in the short-term rental industry. We work with small hosts that have between basically 1 and 5 units. We call that segment rentalpreneurs. I'm a rentalpreneur as well. That's why I started the business. We solve a really big problem in this industry. So in the short-term rental space, depending on how you slice and dice the numbers, about anywhere between 80 and 90% of properties are owned and operated by rentalpreneurs, not by large hosts. This is a complete shock to most large hosts that think that most properties operated by enterprise. It's actually operated by like your aunt, your cousin, the girl or guy next door, you, me, Michael, right? Just kind of regular hosts. And the way that revenue is distributed in the short-term rental industry is like a Pareto distribution. So the top kind of usually 20% or so of a market, the top quartile, typically makes about 50 to 75% of the revenue in that market. The people at the top take all the spoils. Small hosts are often not in that segment. So at FutureStay, our mission is to help small hosts make big money by giving them access to technology that helps them price better, make better decisions about their listing and positioning, have the right amenities, compete better with the pros, deliver better guest experiences so they get better reviews, and have a beautiful direct booking website so they get to keep more of what they earn.
Has that rentalpreneur scenario always been the case in the short-term space, or what have you seen change?
Yeah, it's the crazy thing about it is I'm an industry guy, right? Like I've been, one of the talking heads in this industry for about a decade. I started the company literally 10 years ago. And, we've done all the industry circuit, spoken at all the conferences, won most of the awards, Focusrite Top Travel, Focusrite Summit, Verma, Innovator of the Year, all that great stuff. The different OTA partner awards, et cetera. And you would, over time, what you hear is every like 3 or 4 years, there's a new cycle of industry analysts that say that like, this is the year that the industry consolidates and the consolidation and professionalization is happening. And so the little guy is going to get squeezed out of the market. And that's like a new narrative it's like that cycle repeats itself. It just never happens. And it just never really happens. And I think because as an industry guy, right, like many of you listening, when we go to our conferences and when we read our media, the rentalpreneurs aren't in the room. Like the actual market isn't in the room having the conversation with us, right? The supply. And there's just no one from that side, including vendors that primarily target that side, in the room either. It's like we're living in a pretty significant echo chamber as short-term rental professionals and vendors. Me, myself included, like I have to check the data every 3 months and remind, like, is this real? Like, but that's just the reality that we live in. Yeah, it's always been like this. It was like this 10 years ago when I started FutureStay. The first data points that came out about the industry said this, and despite a million reports to the echo chamber reports to the contrary, this is the way the industry actually works, and all the kind of real data sources corroborate it.
Yeah. So much of like the guest and traveler experience, myself included, the expectation has changed so much from like when I remember booking my first, well, it was Airbnb at the time, but other like vacation rentals or short-term stays. Like I remember it kind of being like I was going for a sleepover and like bringing so much of my own stuff. I even stayed in Portland like while the person was staying there. A friend and I like just had a room in a place, which was actually quite nice. And I still keep in touch with the host, believe it or not. He showed us around, took us to the bar, and we had a good time. But, that's changed so much from people like literally a college kid with a spare room and his buddies to this notion of professionalism. So how does FutureStay and how do you recommend like these kind of incidental hosts, how do they bridge that gap of like, you know, I think a lot of people think it's easy and they don't know what's so entailed. How do they bridge that gap to bring it to the level where someone like you or I are going to have a really satisfactory stay and a memorable experience and want to come back and pay the top rate? To me,
Right.
that's one of the biggest problems that we're facing, and you kind of allude to it talking about this echo chamber at these events where the people who need to hear it and level up simply aren't there.
Yeah, this is like, to me, when I think of the biggest problems in the short-term rental industry, it's this knowledge, best practices, and execution gap between rentalpreneurs and professionals, right? It's kind of the, if you give the industry credit for being a $200 billion, global gross booking industry, this is the $180 billion question. How do you get the lagging end of supply? Maybe it's 120, maybe because revenue is distributed X, Y, Z right way, right? But how do you get that lagging supply to perform like what would be considered normally the early adopters, which are the kind of like mid-sized businesses, um, you know, real true entrepreneurs in the space that have 10, 20 properties, and then the enterprise that have hundreds or thousands of properties. And um, how do you solve that problem? Like, obviously, I'm going to say that the answer is, you build the better mousetrap. You create a product that has both education and automation in it, and you get really smart and ruthlessly efficient at distributing that, not to hundreds of hosts, not to thousands of hosts, not to tens of thousands of hosts, but to millions of hosts, right? That's the answer. How do you do it? Let me know, right? And I'll get it to the millions of hosts. We're working on that part, right?
Yeah.
What I can say is there's a really interesting phenomenon that I see all the time, that I've experienced. And it's that um, the the small host, it's kind of like we all talk about the unknown problems, right? Like the known problems, the unknown problems, like we don't know the solution to the problem, but the unknown problems where we don't even know the problem exists. One of the biggest problems in this industry is that the smartest people, right? And I'm not talking about myself or maybe even you, just the people that are really working on amazing solutions to big problems, they tend to forget that this problem exists, because the people that are experiencing it aren't in the room raising their hands saying, I need help. And then let's talk about why that keeps happening. So there's if you look back to 2014, 15, 16, which is I think, we had a chat before the other day, and I think you were talking about entering the industry around that time,
Yeah.
earlier, like
Yeah.
2014, 15. This was like when tech really started hitting, right? This was when like tech started hitting this industry in a meaningful way, not because like people just wanted to build technology for this industry, but in my opinion, and maybe we disagree, which would be interesting if we do. I think that consumer behavior tends to drive technology adoption in industries, kind of getting to the point that you made, right? Because like supply doesn't on their own just go, I want to buy some tools, right? Like, no, the consumers say, I want this thing. You're not able to provide it. I'm going to go with the guy that can provide it, the experience, that level that I want.
Totally. And then around like 18, 19, 20, all these kind of tertiary, I call them like bolt-on cloud applications.
Yep.
I'm going to integrate with the main PMS systems and you're going to get this benefit because they're missing this piece.
Right. The
Yeah,
bolt-on ancillaries started growing in 18, 19, exactly, and
big
20.
time.
Go back one era before, that era where, I mean, you remember this too, because you were right at the beginning of this. There was an era where professional property managers didn't necessarily have PMSs.
Mind-boggling.
Well, but no, but think about why. Because instant booking wasn't really, that was an option. I mean, if you go back to 2015, 2016, most OTAs, short-term rental OTAs, instant booking was not even really optional.
Still, yeah, even in 2015, 16, it was just coming about, but I want to say like under 20% of bookings were instant book at that time.
what's the PMS for? I mean, you could use a PMS if you wanted, but really because you're manually scheduling and processing inventory, you needed someone in the office, which is what you had, to pick up a phone or to correspond with these guests because inquiries were coming through the channels, interact with them, and then complete the transaction and put them in the right place at the right time.
And
Right.
distribution wasn't nearly as fragmented, right? You had like maybe two, three main platforms, and most people only wanted to be on those main platforms and didn't see the bigger value of direct booking at the time.
I think that's true in 2015. I think by 2018, the opposite was true because once instant booking started picking up, then all of a sudden everyone wanted to be on every platform because
Yeah.
now there's real value, right? There's not a manual lift. Anyway, overall point that I'm making is the technology adoption consolidated power in large hosts that had access to technology, right? A small host that didn't have multi-channel distribution or instant booking was going to start getting left behind. Before that, everyone was literally on the same playing field, right? Like you could have 1,000 properties, I could have one. But if we're doing request to book on Vrbo, like you have no advantage over me at all. There's no real-time pricing because there is no pricing. You're gonna call me and then we're gonna discuss what the cost of the reservation is, and someone's gonna be like, well, I'm bringing 2 dogs and this and that. Okay, well that's gonna be $50 a night, right? There was bespoke pricing as well, so there was no technology advantage for hosts of different sizes prior to instant booking and multi-channel distribution. Then the age you're talking about, where ancillaries and bolt-ons started becoming prevalent, that accelerated the tech gap between rentalpreneurs and pros. And that's when you started seeing the market bifurcating in terms of revenue between rentalpreneurs and pros because pros had more distribution, they had better ancillaries. One could ostensibly say they were able to provide a better service, although that's really debatable because we've all seen the negative correlation of properties managed to review scores, the famous transparent data from like late 2020s. But here's the real thing. Here's the thing that people don't remember. We only look at that part and we say, "Wow, man, the pros have this massive advantage, right? Like, why aren't they winning? Why don't the regular rentalpreneurs just start turning their properties over to pros so they can make more money?" And the answer is because the bottom end of technology also creeps up. And so that means what would have been impossible to do in 2012 or 2015 when I started Future Stay, right? In 2015, it would be impossible for me to manage my STR in the Poconos from New Jersey. It would be just, there's no way to do it. I would have to have someone go check it to make sure it's clean. I'd have to have someone give a key to the person. I mean, you could do a lockbox, but then the lockbox code is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So I would literally need people to do it because there was not technology that existed, right? The technology floor has raised such that even with basic rudimentary technology built into the OTAs, I can do this without having a person. Maybe the cleaning is a little tough still, but as long as I can trust someone and they can send me pictures and so on, I don't even really, or maybe I'm using a service. I could be using, a Breezeway or Turno, which is very common. The technology floor keeps making DIY easier. So that reduces the value proposition that a manager has because now I can do it myself more easily. Right. So there's an arms race.
Yeah. What's the service? What does it cost? What can I do on my own?
Right.
And, I think for a lot of these people who get into it, especially if they are looking to, expand beyond one unit and kind of have a cottage business and make more of a go at it, there's definitely a trigger point of like 3, 5 properties, whatever that is. But even that, like you mentioned a stat that still blows my mind, and that is less than 10% of the properties you see distributed are using a PMS. Like, can you walk us through the reality of how these hosts are actually using tech if they're not on a PMS?
Yeah. And first, let's just like validate that stat because it sounds crazy, right? It sounds crazy to me. And I have to keep validating myself. So everyone here that's listening, because you're listening to this great podcast, I'm sure you probably already know that Airbnb has has 2 different fee models. They have simplified pricing, which people generally call host-only fee, and they have their standard pricing, which is the guest fee, where a guest would pay a variable fee on Airbnb. That was the guest fee was the default method for Airbnb pricing for really most of its existence, right? So if you sign up for Airbnb, they would charge you a small fee, depending on what country you're in, typically 3% to cover the cost of the transaction. And they would charge the guest a sliding scale fee. Airbnb has since realized that that in order to, number one, comply with a bunch of EU regulations, and number two, to standardize things, they prefer to have their properties on a host fee, also more in line with the way other OTAs work, meaning instead of charging the guest a variable fee, they charge the host a 15 or 15.5% fee, or 14.5 if you're grandfathered in. And that comes out of the host payout as opposed to being tacked on to the guest. Makes things a little easier for most people involved, although the total cost of reservation is usually slightly higher. But they make even more money. Great.
Great.
Okay, now, so the reason why I bring all that up to say is Airbnb doesn't tell you how many people are on PMSs. Obviously, they don't give that information out. But you can tell how many people are using PMSs, or at least the theoretical maximum limit, because everyone using a PMS is required to be on the host fee. Every single PMS user, host or property, is on the host fee. There are some people that are on the host fee because of other reasons that are not using a PMS. But again, the total maximum number of people that are using PMSs are on host fee. Airbnb has that data available. Companies like AirDNA have analyzed that data, and the net result is that the number or the percentage of properties on Airbnb that are on host only fee is, depending on who slices and dices it, anywhere between 24 and 28% of all Airbnb properties are on host only fee. That means the theoretical maximum of properties on Airbnb using a PMS is 28%. That means 72% are not using a PMS. But way more interesting is that obviously most people that have a PMS don't have one unit. They have two or three or five or whatever number you can attribute to them. And when you do that math, what's 27 divided by 5? What's 27 divided by 3? Let's call it 3. That's 9%. That'd be 9% of all hosts using a PMS and 91% not. Those are the real numbers in this industry. 91% of people just don't have a PMS. And I'll bet, because I talk to these people all day, more than half of them don't even know what a PMS is.
Yeah, I think if you went out on the street and even, landlords or someone thinking about it, and someone's like, yeah, I'm going to buy an investment property and list it on Airbnb, you say, oh, what PMS are you thinking of? You're going to get deer in headlights. They're not going to know. And that's where I see this huge gap of the reality of making money in this business versus what people think. And I think, operationally, logistically, that's one side, but the cost side of cleaners, maintenance, technology fees, like management, it's really, really difficult to actually make a monthly profit on top of whatever capital appreciation you're going to get for that property that you own.
I think that's right. And I think that is I think one of the reasons why the short-term rental industry works the way it does is because individuals have very different financial goals than corporations, typically. And you will commonly find individual rentalpreneurs with one unit, or maybe even two. They're looking at their short-term rental as a way to be able to purchase a second home that they can use sometimes and to defray the cost of the home. So they're okay operating at a loss.
Right, because it's a cheaper way to get a vacation property.
Or they're okay operating at a very small margin or even at a loss, because they're saying, look, I'm going to build value in this asset over the next 20 years. And so as long as I can cover 80% of the mortgage, I'm comfortable. Now, I'm not suggesting that people should do that. That's up to them. They're their own financial goals. But you have an industry where the vast majority of supply in an industry has really disparate financial goals, from like the 10 or 20% of hosts up at the top of the industry that have very focused financial goals. And you end up with a market like short-term rentals, which is a really crazy, chaotic Wild West that never seems to get centralized or consolidated, as we say is going to happen every 3 years.
Yeah. Who do you think is winning and losing here between the host and the guest, or the providers of the tech? Are they the ones just reaping all the rewards?
one joke that some of my advisors and over the years board members have said to me about about startups is and technology is that there's does the customer win? Does the startup win? Does the investor win? The lawyers always win. No matter
Always.
what, the lawyers always win, right? So in
Yeah.
this case, who's really winning here? I mean, the OTAs are winning, right? They are certainly winning. I think everyone's winning a little bit here. I think that there are millions of successful, and your definition of success may vary, right? Successful rentalpreneurs, and there are a lot of an enterprise, or there I don't want to say enterprise. There are a lot of kind of entrepreneurs that also win. I think we can all agree, like you've been in the space pretty close as long as I have, right? Like there have been some really clear losers. I think people that bet the farm on this thesis of, hey, we can build a multi-thousand unit, multi not meaning two, but meaning 10 or 20,000 or 30,000 unit short-term rental business, either by acquisition or by arbitrage. I think they and in many cases all of their financial backers and investors have lost. I think that model is almost a dead model at this point in time, if not already completely dead. And I think one of the reasons why is because, again, when you have that mindset of like, we're going to be able to compete and win because we expect everyone else in the market to be a rational actor, and you forget that 80% of the market are not rational actors because they're like your neighbor that just wants to buy a beach house in Antigua and doesn't care if they're losing money on it. Like it doesn't make like you can't fight. You can't. It's hard to win against irrational actors, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like the rentalpreneur wins at the end of the day, and I think the guest wins because the professional segment drives better standards. The OTAs drive better standards.
What would you say is the kind of low hanging fruit or the fastest way someone could get from that middle segment to that top quartile?
In terms of performance in the
Yeah.
market. Um, well, the way that we look at performance at Future Stay is typically around RevPAR. And I mean, one thing to note is that like I'd say probably about 90% of the people that we talk with that we optimize properties for don't know what RevPAR is. Like they've never heard the phrase RevPAR before we say it to them because this isn't their job, right? These are smart people, but they're smart doing a completely separate thing with their time, and it's not short-term rental or hospitality management, right? So
So how do you use it, or how do you explain it to them in a way that they understand that like this is a key metric amongst
yeah.
others, and that goes back to what we first talked about, like bridging this gap to professionalism. So how do you engage in that kind of conversation?
Well, with RevPAR, we say, look, this is really, I mean, number one, we show them their market, right? And we say, here's your property, and here are your 10 closest competitors. We did a core sample of your market and found the people that are the most that guests, because they don't know what a comp set is, right? And so we say, here are the 10 properties that guests that are considering your property are most likely to also be considering booking, right? And we are ranking these by this metric called RevPAR. And RevPAR is the way we explain it. It's like imagine, like you understand your occupancy percentage, the percentage of available nights that are booked. You understand your daily rate, right? Imagine if daily rate and occupancy had a baby. And so we're not just seeing your daily rate or just your occupancy, we're seeing your daily rate by the number of nights that you were actually booked out of the ones that were available. So that way you get a true measure of how much revenue you're making based on your actual availability. And everyone goes, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you think of a better name for RevPAR, please suggest it to me because we have to explain this all the time. But ultimately, like using RevPAR as a guide, one thing that we do when we look at markets, we're super, super strict on the way we build comp sets because I think best practices around, I mean, everyone has their own best practices for comp set building, but I think that like a lot of people are too lenient on comp set building. Like there's like this gap where they go either too strict or they're too lenient. What I mean by that is because people don't have that much access to data and to tooling, it's very common to go to a tool like like AirDNA or to STR Insights, which I'm also a big fan of, and be like, okay, click, show me a comp set. Now, mind you, 80% of people never even do that, right? So they're not even on that level, right? They're on Airbnb doing a search and looking at other homes, right? That's how they build their comp set, and they don't call it a comp set and they don't track it. But the people that actually do the technology, they just look at like bedrooms and bathrooms count, and that's kind of as far as they go typically, and they build their comp set based off of that. But that's not your real comp set, because your real comp set are people that are actually that would be considering booking your home. And so if I look at, like, let's just say my Poconos property, and my Poconos property is a lakefront property. And so my ADR on my property is significantly higher than the non-lakefront property next to mine, which is the same size property and has the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. But it's my ADR is lower than the lakefront property next to me, which has the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. They just have a nicer property than I do, right? They just do a better job with their property. We're renovating, right? But so anyway, overall point is the property behind me that's not lakefront isn't really my comp set. I really should not put that on my comp set just to puff up my ego and say I'm doing better than X, Y, and Z, because someone that is willing to spend $600 a night or $700 a night they're not considering a property that's going to be $200 a night.
It's a completely different experience. It's a completely different vacation. Yeah.
Right. And so we start with building an actual comp set that understands like why the guest is going to the home and what key amenities or experience they're looking for. Beachfront, ski in, ski out, parking, no parking, like the important things, right? And then once you build that, now you have at least fair playing ground, because like if I have a non-beachfront house and you have a beachfront house, I'm never going to, like, maybe if I go crazy on amenities, then maybe I can beat you. If I'm building a swimming pool, fine. Maybe then I'm swimming pool, your beach, we can talk. But otherwise, like, you're not in my comp set, and I'll never get to the top of that market. So we start by building a real comp set. Mm-hmm. And then now you can have like actual hand-to-hand combat with the people in your comp set, because they're your real competitors.
I'm really curious how you do that and do it differently. And you showed me a little bit before. Can you show the audience what that actually looks like? Because I found this so intriguing of what you've built in-house to do just this.
Sure, yeah, happy to do that. This is our internal comp set builder. This is an internal tool. We don't give this to our customers. Our team uses it as a part of our listing optimization and property optimization strategy. Although we are building tooling that is going to go in our product and have kind of like light versions of this. So I'm going to show you, and no one make fun of me here, please. I'm going to show you my new short-term rental, which still says it's by Avant Stay because it has their old listing up, and we haven't rebuilt the listing yet.
Sure.
And you can kind of see the performance there also on the reviews, right? So that's not me. That's the old manager. But we're going to be doing a good deal of work in here. And as you can see here, let's just start at the top. So normally, if you were using a normal comp set builder, this would be all you would get, and then you'd be doing bedrooms and bathrooms, and that would be the kind of extent of the tool. What we also add here, and I'm using this like this isn't like tied to an account. If I were using a paid future stay account, this would also show square footage and the home value. The reason why that's so important is, similarly to things like lakefront or beachfront or those kind of key amenities, we have what we call future stay landmark amenities that would be those differentiators. If Michael's home is $4 million and mine is $800,000, even if they're next to each other, he's not my comp, because he should be charging so much more than me because of the value and the design and the thoughtfulness or the size of his home, even if it's 3 and 2 and mine is 3 and 2, that he's not really my comp. The same guest shouldn't be considering the both. So we throw square footage and estimated value in there as well. And we tie that into a metric that we call property class. Okay. And so we try to compare homes that are similar in property class to each other as well. So you have a true comp, meaning anyone on this list, I should be able to compete against and beat. Anyone here should be able to beat anyone else on this list, because that's how we build our comps, as opposed to, hey, there are people at the top that are just winning because they just have way better homes than everyone else, right? So you should be able to get anywhere in here by what you do in your listing, maybe some small, medium amenity changes, nothing that'd be more than like $10,000 of investment, and the way you're pricing and what your policies look like. Okay, so we build this home has been off the market since we bought it, which is why there's no last 90 days revenue. And this is like the tip of the iceberg for what we do. This is how we start, and then we do an analysis of all the amenities in the market, and we see the correlation between the highest, this not causation, but the correlation between the highest value amenities and what impact they have on revenue. We make it really easy for our team to make suggestions of things that you can buy or things you can add to your property on the revenue basis. We do a kind of full debug mode. And then we have like the really fun stuff. And the really fun stuff I want to show you is this. So the next thing that we do is we are running internally a constantly evolving set of hypotheses about what drives performance in a given market. And so we're running these every single time we get a new customer with an Airbnb optimization. So there are like hundreds of these running a week. And we store all this data. And then we have an agent, an AI agent, that looks at all the data, makes additional hypotheses, and starts testing it. So let me give you a real world example of what I mean here. So, I'm sure this looks familiar to everyone. This is like complete best practices stuff. Like if you ask someone, everyone would say review count and review ratings correlate with the performance of a property, right? Like everyone thinks that, and it's true. It's usually true. It's usually very, very strong correlation. But we're still going to test it, and we're going to test it in every market. And I guarantee you there's going to be some kind of market that we find one day where maybe it's because there are just so few properties that are more spread out or whatever the case is, where review count and ratings don't correlate with performance. And so we test all these things exhaustively across each market. We then break the market down into the top quartile, the middle 50%, and the bottom quartile. And what that allows us to do is really kind of create bands. What we do is we're not just collecting data, we're collecting data and understanding how it correlates to performance, both RevPAR performance and occupancy performance and ADR performance, by quartile of the market, top 25, middle 50, bottom 25. And we constantly create and test new hypotheses. Either I'll create them, someone on my team will create them, or we have our AI continuing to create and test hypotheses, right? And the reason why we do this is because there are a lot of theories about what drives performance with Airbnb listings and properties. And let's find out. Like, let's just actually constantly keep testing this and get more and more detail about what actually drives performance. So I'm not saying these things are causal yet because we don't know. We don't have enough data. We've only been doing this for a couple of months. But over time, as we make changes to our customers' listings about the things that have the strongest kind of theoretical, the strongest backing by data, we're seeing performance changes. And so we're building our theories and experimenting with them about what actually is causal and what's correlational between a listing and the performance in the market.
Mm-hmm. What does winning look like if you could kind of distill it down to a few points? And like what's happening behind the scenes that either guests don't see or really superior hosts are doing?
First of all, I think again, like this is a little bit of our professional, you and I just being STR professionals, and most of the people here that are listening being STR professionals. The bottom 25% of the market really doesn't know how to do this. And so we're talking about 2-word titles, descriptions that are completely functional. They have amenities that they're not even listing, right? They forgot to mention they have a hot tub, or they say hot tub and there's no picture of the hot tub. Really kind of best practices misses, right? And so there's a big performance gap there that helping people see the data makes them behave a little bit differently. They don't even need the data. They just need best practice. I should say that. The middle kind of 50% of the market, this is where people need evidence to move, right? It's one thing to say, hey, Michael, in your market, or say, hey, Michael, if you change your cancellation policy to X or drop your minimum stay to Y, you'll probably do better. Michael's like, look, man, I'm a smart guy. I work hard. I'm a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer, a garbage guy, whatever it is, civil war, working in the government. I bought this house. I know what I'm doing, right? And so, like, you can't win a battle of wills with this person. That's not helpful. You have to show them the data and say, Michael, look, I don't know anything, but what I see is in your market, people that have drop their Thursdays to 20% off of their normal weekend ADR have more 3-night bookings than you do.
Yeah, you're getting something that you would have not otherwise had. It's an add-on. It's not really costing you anything more.
And so it's the data has to speak for for itself to the host. And I think the big challenge is that's way easier to have that conversation with an enterprise host as a consultant, or like even a kind of startup host. Whereas we're trying to bridge a lot of gaps, and for us, we have to build the trust and get a comfort level with the rentalpreneur.
And that was going to be my next question. So where does that leave us, right? Where does that leave the industry, and where does that leave you at Future Stay to find that next opportunity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for any kind of startup, the biggest problem ever, unless you're in deep tech, is a distribution problem, right? It's like, how do you get in your product, assuming your product works and it delivers on the promise that it says it does, and ours does. How do you get that in the hands of as many people as possible? We figured out a lot of ways that work quite well at Future Stay. If you go back, as I said, it's a 10-year-old company. If you go back to kind of the prior iteration of the company 5 years ago, we cracked the nut on the distribution problem, but our product didn't live up to the promises that we made, right? And so company literally completely turned over. It's an entire new company since then, right? And now we've figured out the product part, and we're at the stage where the distribution is really starting to rack up again for us. I think that's how we're looking at it internally. That doesn't solve the industry's problem. If I go from 10,000 hosts to 100,000 hosts, that's we're missing the other what's the old joke, you're missing the other 90 whatever percentage, right? We're missing 8,900,000 hosts. So great for me, not great for the industry. And I think this problem gets solved when the technology floor comes up high enough that, just like right now, everyone expects instant bookings, but it gets high enough that everyone just expects optimization and things like that built in to whatever else they're using. I don't think it's going to be a PMS discovery change. I don't think there's going to, like, within the next 5 years, we're going to see PMSs, at least in their current iteration, penetrate the market and get to
You
50
don't
or
see
60,
that 10% changing all that much.
maybe 12. Yeah, look, let's say it grows by 50% and it becomes a 15%.
It still seems really small, and that's a
Yeah.
huge gain.
Yeah. For us, it's like a little bit of existential thing for me, because I was one of, Future Stay was literally the first PMS for the rentalpreneur segment. And today, I don't call what we do a PMS anymore. It's almost kind of an irrelevant distinction. And I'm more likely to think about it as like, Future Stay is a tech solution, sure, right? We have a bunch of PMS features, but calling Future Stay a PMS is kind of like saying, well, look, your motorcycle has an engine and it's got wheels and it's got blinkers, so it's a semi-tractor trailer truck. Well, no, it's not. They're built for two totally different purposes, even though they both have to follow some of the same rules, right? We built Future Stay to really help hosts succeed, not help them scale or automate a business.
What are some of those nuances that fit your typical customer in this like middle band of, they've got a real business, but they're not monsters, and they don't need, you know, some of these major solutions, but you're the right fit for them. What is that nuance that creates that good fit?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the biggest distinction is what they're looking for. So, because we are a PMS centric industry where the PMS is viewed as the center of your technology stack, right? And it is in most cases. It's, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we're thinking PMS first. So we're like, well, why wouldn't you just get a PMS first and then you get all this other stuff on top of it? They're not looking to start with a PMS. They're looking to solve a different problem that would be solved by some combination of ancillaries plus some combination of guidance and education. They want to solve a really simple problem. You know, the way I like to say it is when I was sunsetting the first version of Future Stay years back, and I was meeting with Airbnb, and they were telling me, "Hey, Phil, you sure you want to sunset this? You guys have more individual connected hosts than any other PMS in the industry. Like you're the number one number of individual connections." Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, we're losing money on all these hosts. Like we have to. Don't worry, we'll be back." Um, by building the number one largest PMS for independent hosts in the short-term rental industry, I learned a really simple and poignant truth, which is that independent hosts don't want a PMS. They want a button that they can press and make more money. And a PMS will never be designed for that. A PMS is a toolkit. It's a toolbox. It has no instructions in it. It's for you to build whatever you want from it. It tries to stop things from breaking, but it doesn't tell you how to succeed. And it also doesn't tell you what success can look like for you, right? And so PMSs are designed for flexibility, automation, and scale. Future Stay is designed to help people identify where they are, where they can be, and to bridge the gap between the two.
What's still being asked this day that the market's not delivering? And if you're able to disclose anything on your product roadmap, is there anything coming from your side that's going to address that?
So it depends so much on the segment. I mean, I think in the enterprise segment, the market is doing a really great job. And there's like a little bit of an arms race happening right now, in terms of closing the gap around like, guest experience and AI automation, right? I mean, like it's if you're a professional property manager and you're not using AI automation on your guest experience side, it's probably because you don't trust it yet, not because you don't have access to it, right? You made
100%.
a
Yeah.
decision to not use it. And which is maybe fine for you depending on how you operate your business, and maybe in a year or two you'll be using it. I think like though that kind of last mile of operational automation is like turnover stuff and guest experience stuff. I think that is being really rapidly worked on by a number of really smart companies. Um, on the rentalpreneur side of the market, the big gap is just people. I mean, look, people just are literally not using technology, and so I could talk about 4 or 5 features that we're working on that I think are game changers. It kind of doesn't matter, right? Like we don't like if you're not using any technology, just starting to use technology, like that's the gap we need to close. Getting more people to
Just
use
start,
technology.
and that's what we encourage in our business as well. When we're talking to people like you and building out our growth plans and our proposals, oftentimes we just say like, whether you work with us or not, just try. Like we really encourage you, like get an N8N account, like set it up, give your staff some ability to try things and fail fast. And I think that's something that we talked about as well, is that you've really enabled your team to go after it and try things and um, really develop ways to make your company more efficient, access more leads, improve communication. Can you talk to us about that mentality and how you've really taken this on and enabled your team to take those next steps and to take it out of just your hands, and expand that into a collective mindset?
Yeah, totally. So this is actually a really easy problem to solve, at least for companies that are not massive. And the reason why it's really easy is because I'm a software engineer. And the reason why I became a software engineer is because when I was really young, I started poking around with coding and so on. And when you build your first thing, it's like the closest that humans get to magic, where you can like snap your fingers and then a thing exists in the world that like people can use and touch and it changes stuff. It's such an amazing feeling. When you use AI to create that same kind of value, like, and you empower people that have never built product on their own or built process on their own that exists, right? That's like a thing that people can read or touch or see or interact with or talk to or whatever. They feel so good immediately because it's just a really good feeling. Like people love to create stuff. So the easy part is the motivation. Like once you let them do it, they get addicted to it. That's also part of the hard part. You got to figure out how to make sure that everyone isn't just spending all the time vibe coding, right? But the way we did it at Future Stay was we said, look, okay, guys, we're gonna everyone, everyone hates us. All right, every guys, we're gonna do a company challenge, blah blah. Everyone thinks it's like the lamest thing ever. But here, I guarantee you guys are going to love this. In every department, we are going to give, I know everyone's hearing about AI, we're going to give one pro license to, and we use Claude. So we were on, I think it was like max 20x or whatever it was, like the $200 a month plan, like the highest plan. We're going to give one pro license to one person in each department. So anyone can compete for it. The winner of it is going to be the person that builds the product that is the most useful to solve an existing challenge or create new opportunity at Future Stay. And so we basically just did an internal competition, which ended up with, way more people getting pro licenses than we said we're going to, because anyone that really engaged started loving it. And we have experts across the whole team doing this, right? It's like the second you give people the ability to like unblock themselves and they don't have to wait on like team X or team Y, they start working. Now, the challenge on all this is like, you have to make sure that they're building things that like work well together. And so we do have a bit of an internal process that like our engineering team and product team has to be in the loop with what you're doing, and you have to use kind of sanctioned connectors and so on.
Sure.
But other than that, like we really do let our team run wild with it. And we've solved a lot of challenges and moved a lot faster because of it.
Is there one thing that sticks out from this enablement and like trust giving that has been a big win or you've gotten from it?
Yeah, totally. There are two that stick out to me, and it's nothing that I've done. And I do a lot of vibe coding, and I do a lot of AI coding and AI agent building and so on. I'm way more impressed than anything I'm able to get close to, or even like my super smart product team. Like we're all doing regular stuff with this. I've been the most impressed by my operations team, my operations team have local team members here in the US. We have team members overseas, and just another kind of like proof point that like it doesn't matter where in the world that you live or where you're from or kind of what your background is. Like if you get the right tools, the right opportunity, you can kick a bunch of ass with it. One of my ops team leaders who's been with me for a while and is based out in the Philippines, a super smart, diligent guy. And he's built a lot of success for himself working with us. He had a data and workflow challenge that he just hasn't been able to solve at Future Stay with our existing resources, including having like a kind of almost full-time data consultant working with him to try to like solve whatever. He's just never been able to. We gave him access to like a few APIs. He built connectors to like BigQuery using like Claude code, built his own operational dashboard to answer during the contest, like in a 2-week period, to answer questions that we haven't been able to get consultants to solve for like 3 quarters.
That's so
And then we validated it. We look at the APIs, we look at the data. It's like working. And it's like we use his tool like more than we probably, we are on like HubSpot Enterprise paying some ungodly fee, right? He's able to surface data faster, easier, and cleaner for us out of that than we are out of, a ridiculously expensive CRM with like professional consultants that have set it up.
It's really incredible, and I think what that goes to show is just giving people the ability to run wild, to get out there, to try it, to push boundaries. And to me, it really comes down to enablement and trust. Those two things within your team and your staff, and also a culture of innovation, a culture and a mindset of improvement. That's always been really important to me for any company that I start or join in the past. Of what are your processes and do they change? How long has that been there? Are they documented? Are you reviewing them? And I think you're at the forefront of doing that, and you've really baked it in to your business.
Yeah,
recognizing
you have
this
to
isn't
challenge
going
them to
away.
change. You have to challenge your team members to, like, the way that we position it, and this is the reason why we said, like, you're going to get this AI account, is we're positioning it to them like this is a skill that they should learn.
I've heard of people leaving companies that aren't using AI, being like, "I'm going to be a dinosaur. I'm going to get left behind if I don't upskill myself." And
Exactly.
ideally, upskill on the job while getting paid to do it and working for these companies that are moving forward.
The other quick story that of that's impressed me also is, like, on our design, on not design, on our marketing team. We have someone that joined, a little over a year ago as a junior employee and is starting to work her way up through the marketing team. Super talented person, and she's a kind of marketing all rounder, like coordinator style role. Not a designer, doesn't have is learning copy, but like doesn't have a ton of experience in copy. We gave, she started using Claude Code, and not joking with you at all, like, she is the Claude Code design whisperer. I've been designing products and building products for 20 years. I could spend all day trying to get my Claude UIs to look great. Never, I can't get it. She can do 2 or 3 turns on iteration, and it looks like it was designed by, like, the best design team that you can get, that money can't buy. You know what I mean? So it's like you see these people learn these skills that they didn't even know they had,
Yeah,
and
this hidden talent,
it's addictive to them too, right? Like, which is good.
because they never had a tool that could help them unlock that in the past.
Yeah, and when they, it's like anything else. The more it feels good to use, the more you'll use it and the better you'll get at it, right? And so we've unlocked new capabilities within the team because we're allowing people's natural skills to develop and rewarding them for being able to develop those natural skills. And, like, for me as a team lead, I mean, I'm the CEO of the company, it feels great. And it's more productive. Everyone wins, right? Like, it's the greatest thing. And who loses with AI, with vibe coding? Your weekend and nights are what you lose, because you do your job all day and then you get home and you're like, oh, let me just boot up Claude and then you end up, like, vibe coding for, like, the next 3 hours, right? So
Yeah, because it's like you said, you get a little bit of, it's like it's feeding that intrigue. You're just getting more. What's this? What's this? What's this? What can I do? And it's, yeah, and all you want to do is kind of keep building it and then deploy it the next day. Totally.
and, like,
Um,
show your coworkers, show your friends, you know what I mean? Like, it's super, like, I literally see it, and I see in my team members the way I felt as a teenager when I would stay up all night writing code. But I'm seeing this in, like, 30 and 40 and 50-year-old people, right, that have been doing a different job for however long, but now they're like, oh my gosh, I have a magic wand now.
and they can build something that makes a difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah. As we come to an end here, I often like to give a few rapid fire questions. So I've got a few and they might be a little spicy. So a hot take out there is that most STRs are actually running poor businesses. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, I look at comp sets and property performance all day long. Not all day, but a lot of it. And yeah, I think a lot of rentalpreneurs honestly don't know how their short-term rental is doing. They also probably don't even know what their real goals are, to be honest with you. Having said that, that doesn't mean they're not delivering good guest experiences. It just means that the overall business, in terms of being able to deliver a financial return or a return on investment, is not good. Could be making guests super happy and creating a lot of memories,
Yeah.
right?
I think I would agree with that. Next one. Is Airbnb helping or hurting small hosts?
Helping, hands down. Airbnb is the leader of the charge of the STR OTAs and is creating standards that bring more guests into the industry. Are they helping small hosts as much as they're helping big hosts? Debatable, right? I mean, I think, there are a variety of reasons why you could debate that in terms of individual support and, the level of challenge and, level of acumen required to be successful on the platform. But that's maybe less of an Airbnb problem and more of a Phil Kennard and Future State problem that we have to fix, right? For the industry or for Airbnb. but yeah, helping for sure.
And if someone was in that kind of muddy middle 50% and wants to get to that top quartile, if you had 100 grand to deploy on that property, what would be those things that you typically see where they can deploy that cash and get the best return? Let's call it $1 million property, and they're going to put 100,000 into it.
I would take the first $1,000 and I'd buy an annual subscription to Future Stay so I could actually understand what's going on in the market, right? Because otherwise I'm just guessing. I'd look at the data and I would have the team member, I'd sit down and have the meeting with the team member at Future Stay who's going to literally look through all the data, not just give you a dashboard where you got to figure a bunch of crap out, literally look through the data and make a plan for you for here's what's working in your market. And I would start plucking away at the lowest hanging fruit fixes. Now, that wouldn't take $100,000. It might take $10,000, right? If I had $100,000 to deploy, let's assume we did all the other things and we got towards the top and we're just underneath the first quartile. You're probably in a situation where it's going to end up being your conversion rate through the algorithm, which you're going to need to like really spike, which is going to be, let's start at the bottom. Hopefully we've already fixed this. Like, get a better cleaner, get a better cleaning technology tool, get your reviews up to like 4.9, like so that your guest experience scores are really, really high and they put you in the same bucket as the people that are winning in your market. Like, spend the money to actually be performing well, or on the technology that you need to ensure high quality performance, chat responses, turnovers, like really efficient turnovers, easy guest access, because that's like, you're going to always be struggling and treading water if you're getting bad reviews. So that's fix that, right? The next thing is, do you need a crazy amenity? I think you need to think about who your target customer is. And we do that also. We do customer profiling with other tools that I didn't show you, right? But figure out your target customer and make sure that there's at least like 2 target customer personas and 2 through lines through your listing, and 1 can't miss takeaway for each one of those 2 personas, right? Is it, okay, I'm in a market, I'm willing to spend some money because I know that I can make money if I get up to the top. I got 100 grand to spend. Let's call it 50. Let's make it even easier. I got 50 grand to spend. Okay, it's families are number 1, and then it's going to be group travels number 2 in my market. That's true for my actual market. Okay, well, what am I doing for families? All right, well, we have an entire kids suite going on, and the kids are going to have, it's like, got, the playroom floor and X and Y and Z, and not just games. We're listing them by name. Every single game they like. There's a Peppa Pig this, there's a this and the other. List out all, spend 5 grand, do the research, list all that out in the listing, right? We're child-proofing everything. Put that in the listing. Those couple of little keywords that mothers or people that are caretakers are going to see, and they're going to be like, that, I want to stay in this one, not that one, right? And then on the other side too, pick that one amenity and make it a little bit special. Don't just get a hot tub. Everyone's got a hot tub in your market if you're in that market, right? Get a hot tub, make your hot tub special. Hot tub with floating lights and string light canopy, stereo, right? Whatever. Super soakers. It's so easy. Just like pick a thing that makes it a little bit different, so that way the guest of each one of these types see themselves using it, right? You do that. Pay for the fresh professional photography. Bring the designer in to do. Do you have to do a mural? No, you don't have to do a mural, but you do have to do something where it's like, there are a couple things that you can see yourself in this property, and it's going to stand out versus the other bottom 75.
The Pinterest mindset, the inspiration, the excitement.
Yeah, you don't have to go all the way. This isn't like, you don't have to go crazy with the house. You just need, you got to remember that like this is all fungible to the guest. The guest doesn't care about your property called lakefront with hot tub versus my property called lakefront with hot tub versus the next property called lakefront with hot tub, right? The only thing that's going to make them care is if like they see mine or see yours and they see the thing that makes it different. And that's not always more expensive. It can just be the way the listing speaks to them and the way they use that amenity. One thing that we find, like in the hypothesis I was showing you earlier, is over and over again in almost every market, the top performers have really detailed descriptions of their key amenities.
Yeah. I mean, I read so much into just how the listing is presented before I go through the pictures or ask any questions or just how is it presented? It's such an indication of how the place is kept and what my experience is going to be like.
Think about let's go back to the hot tub. It's not a hot tub. It's a hot tub. Imagine you're sitting there watching the sunset with floating glasses for the provided bottle of champagne that you're going to get.
Yeah, after my ski day, right? I want to relax. My body hurts. Yeah.
Put it together, right? Just like help them see themselves in it. And like that puts you over the line between the being at the top of the 50% and the bottom or somewhere in the top 25%. It's just thinking through it and spending that little extra effort on making it a little bit better.
It sounds like more of a focus, effort, strategic play than a I need to spend and invest play.
If you're in the bottom, you probably need to clean stuff up to get into the 50%, including your listing. But if you're in that middle, that I like to, you call it the muddy middle, right? If you're in that muddy middle where everyone's just kind of fighting it out, the big difference there is strategy. It may be a couple bucks, might be 10K, maybe 20K. It's not 100K. It's not 100K. 100K. You sit down with
you're doing a renovation. You're putting in a pool.
You call Michael up. Michael's going to tell you how to spend the 100K. You're doing a renovation. You're buying some new landmark amenities. This is not. If you're in that messy middle and you want to get to the top 25%, this is 10K, clean up, whatever, some new processes, and you'll get up there.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Phil. I appreciate your insights, your perspective. You've got a lot of experience in the industry, and you're building something pretty cool at Future Stay. For someone who wants to get in touch, find out more, and maybe get an introduction to your platform, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to learn more about Future Stay is to go to futurestay.com, or you can follow me on Instagram at STR Tech Guy.
STR Tech Guy. Love the handle. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much again, Phil. That is all the time we have today on the Vacation Rental Insider. It's been a slice, and we look forward to having you back again, Phil. I'm sure we could talk for another hour or two.
Definitely, Mike.
Yeah. For more information on the industry and podcasts like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you again soon.